nobody care. This planet's empty, I see no signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive. There are no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, everybody, it is Friday, April 28th, 2023. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Friday Politics Roundup. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week, we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And look, we're going full basement view today. That's right. It's been a busy morning already, a little bit seat of our pants today. So I figured, you know what? We're going to let it all hang out. There you go. Yeah, you know what life is like these days? I'll tell you.
It's like being on this moving sidewalk, which doesn't stop.
Moving sidewalk. That doesn't stop indeed. Anyways, you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. I've given you a pretty good reason to join already today, haven't I? Yes, I have indeed. Oh my God. You can also help support the show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time we go live. If you're one of our awesome podcast listeners, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen on. Yes, and leave a comment to let other folks know why you like the show. Little things like this help other people find the show and help shine a light and amplify the amazing work that we're doing here, the people we have on our show, the people in our community that are doing all the work, and so on. I want to remind you also, we can't let Paul Martino and his oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. That's ragingchicken.levelfield.net. Well, on this week's show, I'll give you a spattering of the kind of things that I want to get into today. We'll see what we actually get to. We found out that I'm just going to go run down well, you know what? I'm going to do reverse order so that you can hear it. Let's see. We've got a whole bunch of more university strikes this week, more graduate students out on strike. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that. We're also seeing kind of like, more work being done to roll back child labor laws. Yes, that's right. You've got a place called the Foundation for Government Accountability, a Florida-based think tank and lobbying group, is drafting state legislation to strip child workplace protections. That's right. Foundation for Government Accountability. Foundation for Government Accountability is looking to strip away workplace protections for kids. Just let that sit there for a bit. Yes, indeed. Let's see what else we got here. We're seeing that there's we're seeing an update to PEN America. Now, PEN America, remember, is the organization that is a free speech organization that tracks censorship, looks at what is happening in terms of book banning, and they just released an update to their new report, and they're finding that, yep, 2023 is looking to be a banner year to break all records for book banning at this point. They're rising at a rapid pace in school districts around the United States, and there's new laws and regulations that are limiting the kinds of books that children have access to. Yes, indeed. So maybe we'll talk about that. What do you think? And of course, the big news of the week. Everybody is enjoying the Schadenfreude, right? Tucker Carlson, see ya! Tucker Carlson. Yes, indeed. He's gone. Yes, so what does that mean? That means that Fox is going to be a great... Oh, wait, no. Nothing's going to change, right? Nothing's going to change. All right, you got to remember, it's the machine that's the problem. The machine is the problem, right? And they're always going to find talent that are willing to drive that machine, right? So Tucker Carlson, the guy who helped popularize and nationalize white supremacy and normalize it in public discourse, he's gone. Thank goodness for that. But that's not why Fox News got rid of him. No, looks like there's some kind of like really not so cool emails and text messages that kind of got him that. So we shall see. And of course, this week, the Florida Surgeon General altered key findings in a study on its COVID-19 vaccine safety. Yep, just wholesale look, our scientists are finding that it's safe. I'm going to change that to not safe. I'm going to say, oh no, there's no problems with kind of young men. Oh no, I'm going to change that to yes, young men are going to at risk of greater heart failure and stuff like that, cardiac events. Insane. We're also seeing, and this is a bit concerning, there is a massive turnover in local election officials, or at least that's what they're expecting by 2024. That's according to a new survey that was out from the Brennan Center for Justice in New York. The Brennan Center is basically finding that, yep, there is about 12% of local officials that began working in their roles after 2020 election. 11% said they were very or somewhat likely to quit before next year's 2024 presidential election. That's a little troubling, wouldn't you say? Because who's going to be the new people that are in there? Just think about it. I'm a judge of elections in my precinct. I would encourage you to think about running yourself when that comes up, because you're going to find it. We shall see. We also saw Biden this week announce his re-election bid. A lot of people going, yay. Easy. North Dakota governor signs a law banning nearly all abortions. Right? And that happened in the same week that we just found out that conservative lawmakers in Nebraska and South Carolina ended up going the other way, right? They had really kind of basically very similar laws that were going through the books that we saw in North Dakota pass, but they, thanks to some women Republicans, frankly, in particular, especially in Nebraska, from I believe. That were seriously responsible for, basically shaming some of their fellow Republicans to not go to the extreme there. We'll see. And then also in other kind of antics throughout the year, we saw that there was some university faculty members who decided to put their pronouns in their official, profile, and guess what happened? They got fired. Yep, they got fired. Here's that. I could go on and on and on. Good news, after 22 years, LGBTQ anti-discrimination legislation cleared the hurdle in the PA House. Huge. Jessica Benham and was been kind of behind this for kind of quite some time, which is pretty kind of amazing. Malcolm Kenyatta was there as a co-sponsor for this legislation. This has been around for literally 22 years was when it was first introduced, and now it has finally passed the House. Now, obviously, it's got to go to a floor vote. There's going to be more discussion there. There's going to be more controversy when it gets to the state Senate. But this is it's like one of those moments, right, that you mark. This is really important. Really important. New audio also reveals that top GOP lawyers got a 2024 strategy. Make it harder for college students to vote. Yep. Gotta love this. They were heard quoted. This is one of the quotes. What is it with the young people effort that they do? Talking about Democrats. They basically put the polling place next to the student dorm, so all they have to do is roll out of bed, vote, and go back to bed. Yep. 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 There you go. I told you, I'm kind of all over the place today. And why am I all over the place today? Well, maybe it has something to do with the fact that the Pembridge School Board decided to hire, after a really contentious board meeting, some amazing parents and community members and teachers who came out and spoke out against this. But they went ahead and they hired a company that is called Vermillion Education, which is basically an outgrowth of a dude that works closely with Hillsdale College, was a former I don't even know if you can call him a teacher, but employee there. Yep. it basically agreed to hire Vermilion Education to rewrite the social studies curriculum. Now, what made this so contentious, I want to remind you, there are no Democrats on the school board in Penridge. I want to remind you that there are no Democrats there, and so this was contentious within there, and most of it was over process and procedure. The fact is that you had some of the 4 of the most extreme members of the board were in on a scheme to hire this firm, right? They put it on the agenda like 24 hours before the board met, which is the minimum requirement to get something on the agenda. Last minute, the remainder of the board was unaware of this, or maybe there were 5 members who were aware of it, but there were definitely 3, certainly 4, and maybe 5 of the board members were in on it. But even like former kind of extremist board president Joan Cullen was not very happy about the way that this all went down. We shall see. So there's a lot of that stuff. Gun violence actually worse in red states. It's not even close, right? So even though you've got all the conservative media that's out there fanning the flames about kind of violence in our cities, it's not happening in their cities. It's happening in their own freaking backyards because of their runaway gun laws. And then in more PA news, we got kind of, some pretty cool stuff. We had, they were highlighting Elizabeth Fiedler, Dave Madsen, and Jordan Harris. We're checking out the Steelton High Spire High School that has this, they basically unveiled their solar panel field, which is basically it's going to use to power the school districts and schools and buildings. They're kind of pushing forth legislation that will kind of make it easier for schools to do this. That's pretty awesome. I think this is one of the things that every school board should be, or every people in areas should be pushing on their school boards right now, is to have their schools make sure those big flat roofs that sit there baking in the sun all day. Put some solar panels up there, and not only will it reduce energy costs for the building, but it'll actually kind of feed back into the community and help maybe reduce energy costs across the board. Right? Not to mention, it's the thing we need to do to save our planet from a freaking dystopian future. But you know that. Anyways, all that and more in today's show. For more PA Progressive Talk, tune in to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, or Facebook. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. For all the details, head on over to ricksmithshow.com, thericksmithshow.com, for the latest across all his platforms. And you got to check out Sister of the Night Caucus podcast, the amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast. Rock the house! And they know where their bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcast at Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. And if you haven't heard, get out from under that rock. As I always say, The Signal is a new podcast from the Bucks County Beacon. The Signal is hosted by the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, and produced by yours truly. That's part of the reason why it's so busy around here today. We actually we recorded the show this morning that's going to come out on Wednesday, and you're not going to want to miss it. So you got to check it out. Twice a month, The Signal will shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. Cyril invites guests who can provide insight and analysis and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive roots. Check them out at the buckscountybeacon.podbean.com or look up The Signal or the Bucks County Beacon wherever you get your podcasts. And for all you gamers out there, the Game Inn with 2 N's is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show. They got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops. Whoa, those are Funko Pops. And kids get discounts with A's when they get A's in the report cards. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at the Game Inn with 2 N's. Shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. A special shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff and follow him on his YouTube page. Follow him on his YouTube page or follow him on Twitter at Song of Dayman. There's a 2 N's at Song of Dayman on Twitter. Now, we got some major stuff coming up here, which I'm really, really excited about. So first of all, this Monday, we're not going to have a guest this Monday, but we're going to be talking about what went down in the Penridge School District this past week. So for all you Bucks County folks who want to chime in, want to kind of get in on the show, it's going to be a good opportunity to talk a little about what happened and have a kind of discussion about that. I'll have some clips that we can listen to and kind of unpack a little bit at what's happening there. If we have time, we'll kind of dig into some of the stuff that's going on with some of these strikes that are happening across the country on Monday too. But my guess is we're spending most of the time on what happened at Penridge. Now, Monday on May 8th, I'm welcoming Mark Engler to the show. Mark's a Philly-based writer and author of This is an Uprising, How Nonviolent Revolt is Shaping the 21st Century. And he's also a member of the editorial board of Dissent. We're going to be talking about his latest article, Can Movements Keep Politicians from Inevitably Selling Out? That appears in the most recent issue of Dissent and The Forge and Waging Nonviolence. And then on May 15th, right, I'm super psyched about this. I'm welcoming Christine Marusik back to the show. You might have remembered she was on the show back in 2021 when we talked about her investigative series called Fractured, about the impact of fracking on people, on their actual bodies in Southwest PA. She's award-winning Pittsburgh-based journalist who covers environmental health and justice for Environmental Health News. Well, anyways, Christina's got a new book out called The War on Cancer, The Unlikely Heroes Revolutionizing Prevention. It's a really cool book. I'm really looking forward to talking to her about it. I know she's been, her work, I love her writing. If you haven't checked her stuff out, you definitely got to check it out at Environmental Health News. But we're going to be talking about her book, The New War on Cancer, Unlikely Heroes Revolutionizing Prevention, and it's on May 15th. I've also got another guest that's kind of in the wings here too as well, but waiting to confirm the date. And I'll be very, very excited about that. Matter of fact, you know what? I should just check my email right now before I say another word, because it may be indeed that date has been confirmed now. Let me see. Nope, not yet. Okay. Good. Anyways, I told you I'm going to be all over the place today. Yeah. So anyways, listen, if you want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. Today. We're here for the fight, but we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement and the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month by going to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, I managed to do it again. I managed to make sure that I spent too much time on the intro and my music ran out. And so here I am. So you got to listen to the last part of that with just me. So crazy. So I'm like I said, a little bit scattered today. In part, it's just been, it's the second to last, the penultimate week, as it were, of my semester. It's been busy as all heck at work, and there's that. I've got stuff I've got to get to this afternoon, and we recorded an episode of The Signal this morning. So just there's a lot of stuff going on today. And on top of everything else, I'm just freaking exhausted. So there you have it. So here we have it. But there's there was enough. I weighed whether or not, okay, maybe should we just kind of postpone and do this whole kind of Friday Politics Roundup on Monday along with that. So no. Let's just focus on Penridge on Monday. So I'll do this even if it's going to be a little scattered. So a lot of the news that I read in the headlines today, it kind of, falls into a couple categories, right? One, we're seeing that it's starting to really shape up about where we're going to see a lot of the campaigning is going to happen for the 2024 elections. And obviously these the 2023 elections, which is municipals, school boards, and that kind of stuff, is really going to be used by the right, it seems to me, as a way of starting to shore up its base for 2024, right? But there's some cracks in their plan in a little bit of certain degree. So let me start with here before we get to the Nebraska one. Well, actually, let's not go to the Nebraska one first. Let's go to the, I want to talk about the, what happened in North Dakota, right? Because in North Dakota, the governor signed legislation that bans nearly all abortions, right? So read a little bit here from, this is coming from The Guardian. Right. This is from Monday. Now, North Dakota on Monday adopted one of the strictest anti-abortion laws in the U.S. as the Republican governor, Doug Burgum, signed legislation banning the procedure throughout pregnancy with slim exceptions up to 6 weeks gestation. In those early weeks, abortions would be allowed only in the cases of rape, incest, and medical emergencies such as ectopic pregnancy. Right? Quote, this bill clarifies and refines existing state law and reaffirms North Dakota as a pro-life state, Burgum said in a statement. Right? So they're setting up. I mean, a lot of these conservatives, these states are really setting up. They're going a whole hog in on the kind of anti-abortion move, and kind of codifying this anti-abortion stance into law. So, as we've said on the show multiple times, as advocates, abortion advocates have been saying forever, as Planned Parenthood has been saying forever, right? When they go after Roe, right? And they were saying this before they overturned Roe v. Wade, but they're going after Roe, and they can say whatever they want about, they don't want to have a national ban. They just want to, that things are going to be fine. Don't worry about it. States will handle it. No, it's just going to start going state by state by state by state, red state by red state by red state, kind of overturning any access to abortion, right? So we saw that at the beginning of the week in North Dakota. What was interesting, just yesterday, I believe, we saw a little bit of a different outcome in two other conservative states. So again, this is in the Washington Post. I'll just kind of run through this real quickly for you. So here's how this article begins. So the article is Conservative Dissenters Block Abortion Limits in Nebraska and South Carolina. So the failure of strict new abortion laws to advance in two conservative-dominated legislators on the same day this week signaled a mounting fear among some Republicans that abortion bans could lead to political backlash. A near total ban on abortion failed Thursday in South Carolina, just hours before a six-week ban fizzled out in Nebraska. Abortion remains legal in both states until 22 weeks of pregnancy. In lengthy and often impassioned speeches on the South Carolina Senate floor, the state's 5 female senators, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, decried what would have been a near total ban on abortion. One Senator Sandy Senn, a Republican, likened the implications to the dystopian novel The Handmaid's Tale, in which women are treated as property of the state. Abortion laws, Senn said, quote, have always been, each and every one of them, about control, plain and simple. And in the Senate, the males have all the control. This is really interesting, right? Because what this shows, so first of all, we know from polling, right, that Americans broadly, right, support legalized abortion. Right. So when you ask people in polls, that's what they say. Right. And then when you ask women, right, it's even higher. Right. Which would make sense given our kind of, white capitalist patriarchy that we still are in. Anyways. And that was true across political parties, too, as well. Again, there's some variation. Right. It's not like it's the same in Democratic or Republican parties, but you saw Republican women broadly support legalized abortion. Right, so those are polls, but also what we've also seen that there's been a kind of that growing disjuncture between what Americans want, as represented in these polls, versus what legislatures do. Right, so we all know that again, if you've been listening to the show for any length of time, that look, there is broad support for things like Medicare for all. There is broad support for increasing taxes on the super rich. There is broad-based support for a whole series of social programs that are championed by what we would call progressives today, right? But in terms of how that's reflected in our politics, like what the official Democratic Party does or what the official Republican Party does, they're off the map. Even like Democrats, they're kind of like out of step with what most people want, right? So the politicians who are controlling the political parties are not reflective of what's happening kind of within the American population writ large, right? And a lot of that has to do with gerrymandering when it comes to Republicans, because the Republicans have basically made sure that they have safe states, that there is no possible way that they need to, in any significant way, really respond to their constituents. They don't have to worry about it, right? So they can take extremist positions, and there is no one that can compete with. There's not enough Democrats to get them to oust these Republicans in many of these conservative states. Now, of course, in 2010, that happened at the state level. So you had this flipping of all these state legislatures, right? Which kind of The Democratic leadership and the Obama administration were kind of sleeping on the job for that one, which they basically lost historic losses at the state level in terms of Democratic control of state legislatures or even just the numbers of representatives. And that led to like all these kind of like really radical moves at the state level, right? So this polling, however, around abortion, especially after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, right? It's made this, it's made it increasingly difficult for anyone to hide behind, the fact, say, oh, listen, that, we're pro-life, but really in the back of their mind, you hear the stories all the time, right? Where, well, that's not what the legislators really believe, but they're saying it because they're constituents, or they're saying it because they need to for their party, whatever it might be, whatever excuse they're going to offer. But here, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, now suddenly what it means to be quote unquote pro-life, a pro-life Republican in particular, right? Now you have to you're basically saying there is no federal protection, right? So your vote actually matters now, right? So in the case of North Dakota, they're like, yes, my vote matters now. So now we're going to ban abortion, right? So you're basically taking 50% plus of your statewide constituents, and you're basically saying, see ya. We don't care about you anymore. We're going to put you under our control. Women, people can get pregnant, right? But now we see and I don't know, I haven't seen enough reporting yet about how much of what happened in South Carolina and then Nebraska had to do with some of the fallout that was happening in the media about what happened on Monday in North Dakota, right? My suspicions is that people in Republicans in particular in Nebraska and South Carolina were watching what was happening in North Dakota rather. And they were like, holy crap, people are like nationwide are pretty pissed about this. Matter of fact, our own constituents are pretty pissed about this, right? And so there's 5 women in South Carolina, 5 women in this body, right? All the rest are men, and they're about to make a decision that is going to kind of like impact 50% plus of the people in this state. And we're here. So now it's like, what are you going to choose? You're going to choose like your Republican ideology that you think you need to get reelected, or are you going to choose the fact that these men are about to control your body? And in the South Carolina case, those Republican women, right, stood with the Democratic women and made this strong case, and basically were able to kind of, defeat this measure. That's huge, right? And that's the kind of thing that, kind of people have been hoping to see. The real question was, are we going to actually see it? Because, as much as the polls are important, right, we've all have to realize that by simply stating that, look, most Americans support this thing, that doesn't mean anything inside these state legislatures. Right? Because that is about power politics that's happening in state legislatures. So it might be true, like in a functional democratic system, that the percentage of people that are supporting a particular policy would have some sort of correspondence to how politicians acted, and that politicians would feel pressure, right, from their constituents, and would worry about their jobs if they were acting in opposition to what the polls show that their own constituents want. But like I said, because of the way that gerrymandering has worked and the way Republicans have blocked off their control of state legislatures, right, they don't need to do that. But now maybe, right, as we're seeing concerns about, people are starting to look ahead to 2024, right, start look at the presidential election. And there's pressure coming directly down on kind of especially Republican women, right? But across the board in these state legislators, that we might actually be seeing some cracks in what's happening, right? And we could take the most positive view or the most cynical view, or like we could say a more positive or a more cynical view of this, right? A more positive view is that these women in South Carolina, for example, were standing up because of exactly what they said, that this has been about control. I mean, it's wild to see these Republican women, right, basically taking up these tropes from activists on the progressive to left, right, basically drawing attention to what's going on here, the Handmaid's Tale stuff, right? But they're saying, no, we are going to choose our gender, right? We are going to choose our rights. We are going to choose like the protection of kind of women and people that are pregnant. That's what we're going to choose and based on, because we are in that, and we are going to represent ourselves and this constituency, right? Best case scenario, or better case scenario, let's say, right? The more cynical version, right, but produces the same outcomes. The more cynical version is that they're seeing the writing on the wall, right? That they said, okay, they're going to come out strongly here because they realize that now their own jobs are on the line, because they see that this is deeply unpopular in the constituents and they're at risk of losing their seats. So regardless, either one of those things can be true. We're going to find out more of that, I'm sure, as reporting goes on, as the weeks go on. Actually, what's going on and more analysis and reporting happens with that. But that's really good. Now, here's the other thing. So while it was women who helped defeat the measure in South Carolina, in Nebraska, it was an 80-year-old man who stalled it. Senator Merv Reep, a longtime Republican who would have been the decisive vote to advance the bill to a final round of voting, abstained over his concern that the 6-week ban might not give women enough time to know they are pregnant. Reep told the Flatwater Free Press that he was concerned the Nebraska bill would be viewed as a total ban. Quote, "At the end of the day, I need to look back and be able to say to myself, did you do your best?" Reep told the paper. "No group came to me asking me to do this. This is of my own belief and my own commitments." Right? And again, Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen came out and kind of like criticized him publicly. I put pressure upon him to go back into the fight. But regardless, so again, we could take the more generous view here, that this guy said that he actually thought to himself that maybe, what can I do to the best? What can I do? Well, I need to do what my conscience tells me. And that deep in his heart, this is what he really believed, right? That may be true. But it's also key important. But what he said he was concerned that the bill would be viewed as a total ban, which in effect it would, right? So he's correct about this. He was concerned it would be viewed in such. So in other words, there's a political calculation here too as well, right? Is that if they pass this, they know that Republicans will be responsible. In Nebraska, the Nebraska Republicans were responsible for passing a total ban of abortion. And that's how it would be viewed, because that's effectively what it is. Right. So in that case, right, Republicans are feeling the pressure in this, like in here. Right. So we're going to see how this stuff plays out. But that's a really, really important information for, like, say, Democrats, right, who are kind of running, or, even in some like cases, sane Republicans, pro-choice Republicans. Right. Although I care less about that. But to put all the more attention on this, right? So remember, for years and years and years and years, Democrats would kind of move away from the language of abortion, right? Move away from the language of kind of abortion rights and start talking about access to women's medical care, right? Because they were under they're in the prison of 1990s Bill Clinton triangulation, right? Where they felt that they had to sound more Republican, or they had to, couch what they really, quote unquote, really believe in Republican terms and move everything to the center, right? And so they stopped. They thought, Roe v. Wade is kind of settled law, blah, blah, blah. So we don't really need, so we can actually play around with the language because really it's going to be protected. Well, as we've talked about in this program multiple times, that's clearly not what happened, right? So that's pretty cool. Emily says, yes, 3 big citizen clapbacks against undemocratic state trends: abortion, guns, and trans rights. Yes, we're seeing that. I think abortion is definitely got to be the number one on that one, right? I think abortion is the protection of abortion rights, not like access to women's medical care. No, protection of abortion rights explicitly, right, is going to need to be really kind of front and center. And, I think, this is, one of the things I see that Ashley Ehas is also, she's running against Brian Fitzpatrick in PA first. She ran against him last time. She had a great campaign built, but she's coming back to build on that, on the successes of that campaign for last time around. She's coming out swinging on this, right? As she should, right? And I think that, that Democrats need to basically be loud and proud about the protection of abortion rights here, and force Republicans to have to kind of try to do their wishy-washy stuff. Because look, one thing that happens in politics, right, just at the campaign level, right, is voters tend to not like people who they can tell are hiding the truth or being wishy-washy about stuff, right? So Republicans will have a choice to do one of two things, right? You have Democrats come out in strong defense of or strong proponents of passing, and not just like say we respect the rights of women to have an abortion. No, let's start putting legislation on the table, right? Start putting it down, introducing legislation protecting abortion rights in Pennsylvania, right? Through the law, in the same way that they're protected under Roe, right? Maybe even extend them even further. Right? Start introducing those bills one after the other to make sure that they're getting through. And Democratic candidates making sure they're campaigning on this. Because what that does is that basically puts Republicans in a position where they have to answer to that. And they can answer it to what they quote unquote really believe, right? Which is that yes, we're going to take away the women's right to an abortion, and we men are going to control them. Right, or we Christian nationalist women and men are going to control those women who would dare to want to have autonomy over their own bodies and not allow God to do with them what they will. Right, so it's going to force them to either be explicit about that, which is again, remind you, deeply unpopular. Right, or they're going to have to try to kind of like change the subject or kind of we do this wiggle stuff, which is transparent to people. Right, and I'm talking about the people who are not paying attention to politics every single day. But now you have more women and more kind of people on the kind of broad Democratic kind of umbrella, if you will, and some of these kind of moderate women in particular, right, who may or may not be Republican, right, who are like say no, I'm going to vote on abortion. And I'm going to vote to make sure that we expand women's right to an abortion. Right? Because now it's crystal clear for everyone. And this is a critical moment. So I think highlighting those, that's why I wanted to highlight those things here, is I really think that, this becomes super important going forward. Right. Oh, God. See, where do I want to go now? I know there's only so many things I could cover today. I'm just like, we can talk about Tucker for a little bit, huh? How people feeling about that? How people feeling about Tucker, huh? See you, Tucker. Yep, Tucker Carlson was basically fired from Fox this week, and I'm not even gonna say good riddance because I don't really care, right? I don't care what happens to him after this. But as much as I'll admit it, like felt great to see that move. I also know full well that Fox is not going to somehow change, right? Fox has not changed, right? That still the goal has to be like kind of limiting and taking down that juggernaut of conservative ideology, right? And just horrific, culture destroying media. But anyways, that's all I'll say about that. I wanted to highlight this too as well, because this is something I want to try to get somebody on to talk about this coming forward. I was hoping, this is initially my plan for Monday's show, because Monday is International Workers' Day. I was hoping to get someone on to talk about what was happening with these child labor laws, but just was not panning out in terms of the timing. So we're going to talk about this. And then everything happened with Penridge. So I'm like, oh, you know what? Let's just talk about that. So this is an article of the Washington Post by Jacob Bogage, I don't know, and Maria Luisa Powell. I think it's important. So they wrote this week, when Iowa lawmakers voted last week to roll back certain child labor protections, they blended into a growing movement driven largely by a conservative advocacy group. At 4:52 a.m. Tuesday, the state Senate approved the bill to allow children as young as 14 to work night shifts and 15-year-olds on assembly lines. The measure, which still must pass the Iowa House, is among several the Foundation for Government Accountability is maneuvering through state legislatures. That's the name of the organization, Foundation for Government Accountability. Remember this one. The Florida-based, of course it's Florida-based, the Florida-based think tank and its lobbying arm, the Opportunity Solutions Project, these people kill me with their language, have found remarkable success among Republicans to relax regulations that prevent children from working long hours in dangerous conditions. And they are gaining traction at a time the Biden administration is scrambling to enforce existing labor protections for children. The FGA, the Foundation for Government Accountability, the FGA achieved its biggest victory in March, playing a central role in designing a new Arkansas law to eliminate work permits and age verification for workers younger than 16. Its sponsor, State Representative Rebecca Burks, said in a hearing that the legislation, quote, came to me from the Foundation for Government Accountability, so said the quiet part out loud. Quote, as a practical matter, this is likely to make it even harder for the state to enforce our own child labor laws, unquote, said Annie B. Smith, director of the University of Arkansas School of Law's Human Trafficking Clinic. Quote, not knowing where young kids are working makes it harder for state departments to do proactive investigations and visit workplaces where they know that employment is happening to make sure that kids are safe. Unquote. That law passed so swiftly and was met with such public outcry that Arkansas officials quickly approved a second measure, increasing penalties on violators of the child labor codes the state had just weakened. In Missouri, where another child labor bill has gained significant GOP support, the FGA helped the lawmaker draft and revise the legislation according to emails obtained by the Washington Post. The FGA for years has worked systematically to help shape policy at the state level, fighting to advance conservative causes such as restricting access to anti-poverty programs and blocking Medicaid expansion. But in February, the White House announced a crackdown on child labor violations in response to what activists have described as a surge in youths, many of them undocumented immigrants, working at meat packing plants, construction sites, auto factories, and other dangerous job sites. The administration's top lawyer called the proposed state child labor laws irresponsible and said it could make it even easier for employers to hire children for dangerous work. Quote, federal and state entities should be working together to increase accountability and ramp up enforcement, not make it easier to illegally hire children to do what are often dangerous jobs, unquote, labor solicitor Seema Nanda said. Quote, no child should be working in dangerous workplaces in this country, full stop, period. So then it goes into the 1938 passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which stopped companies from using cheap child labor to do dangerous work. Now, of course, Pennsylvania has a long history of this, right? I mean, all you got to do is go to any, museum that foregrounds the work in steel, that shows what was happening in the coal mines, where you had, the breaker boys, the little kids that were kind of, breaking up stuff like in the coal chutes and things like this, many of them getting maimed and killed, folks that were opening and closing doors in the mine shafts, right? Kids are getting maimed and killed. We had one of the biggest historical marches against child labor, right? Happened right from Philadelphia, right? Back in the Mother Jones day, right? Kind of marching from the textile mills in Philadelphia to go visit, I guess it was Roosevelt, right? Go visit Roosevelt and basically try to put an end to the child labor, right? So, I mean, it's got a long history. So to imagine that we see like a political party now getting behind rolling back child labor laws at the same time that it is going like foaming at the mouth rabid, right, in our school boards about protecting children, right, is, I mean, again, at the very baseline, we're talking about hypocrisy, right? But this will lead to the deaths of children, right? And I think what the calculus that they're doing here is they're recognizing that most of the children that they want to be able to work are these undocumented immigrants, kids, right? Who the Trump administration, the Biden administration, frankly, the Obama administration, and multiple administrations in a row have failed to really kind of tackle like immigration questions, right? And they made it that much worse. Put kids in cages, then you kind of release them kind of unaccompanied into there, and now they're ended up. We find, we talked about, I think this last week or the week before, where you find out you got this dude from like a meatpacking plant or something like this who's signing up to kind of be the guardian for these unaccompanied minors to make sure that they have a home, but he's putting the work in dangerous conditions. So I hope to have somebody on to talk about that at some point in the near future, because this is going to be, I mean, this is freaking nuts, right? So it's crazy. Let me just check something. I keep on getting these blips. I want to make sure that I'm not missing something. Nope. Okay. So yeah, that's something to pay attention to. Yeah. I don't know what else are on people's minds today, and what's on my mind today. One of the things you may have seen this is a really good piece, short piece by Will Bunch. Will Bunch had this piece that came out. It's called was in his newsletter and published in the Philly Inquirer. What's really behind a wave of college strikes? Now, of course, Will Bunch has written a great book after the Ivory Tower falls that's talking about what has happened in higher education. But here he's basically highlighting kind of what's happening with these strikes at the University of Michigan. You find out that if you've been following at all what's happening at the University of Michigan's graduate strike there, it's pretty remarkable, to the point where you've got, University of Michigan Law School. You've got University of Michigan was like a powerhouse in journalism for the longest time. So you end up having some fairly influential people who've come out of the University of Michigan who are not so pleased about what's going on with their strike there. They've basically there was a great kind of thread on Twitter. I don't know if people saw this by of all people, Jennifer Rubin, right? Let me see if I can pull this up. I thought I had it saved, but Rubin about what was happening kind of in Michigan, right? And she writes, she's a writer for the Washington Post. Where is this? I think it was Jennifer Rubin, wasn't it? Maybe I got that wrong. Oh, maybe I'm wrong about that. I wish I could have sworn I had it tagged, but it was a really good thread about what was going on at the University of Michigan. And this reporter had reached out to some members of the board, had said something like this, and one of the kind of trustees or one of the board members there had gotten back in touch with her. And it was like this freaking incredible, like, back and forth where they're basically saying, yeah, we know that the graduate students shouldn't, like, don't have a living wage, but, isn't that part of the good thing of it, right? Or, if they get a living wage, isn't that unfair to other people in the community? Or, just basically every, like, anti-labor thing that was being put forward, or that you imagine it's being offered in any kind of labor situation, they're coming out of the University of Michigan board. Right. And what Will Bunch does in his great piece, right, is it basically he goes and he says, look, and he's been writing about this for a while, is that we've seen this kind of shift in what's happening in school boards. We talked about this last week with Francois Furkenberg, right? I'm getting the wrong name. We talked about it on the show on Out to Coop Live last week, where these boards, right, these higher ed boards, and this is also true to a lesser degree at the K through 12 level, but these higher ed boards are increasingly being occupied by, hedge fund managers and bankers and real estate developers, people who have absolutely nothing to do with higher education, have everything to do with, the corporatization of higher ed, right? So, and Will Bunch has been calling that out and basically pointing to the fact that these series of strikes, the Rutgers strike, University of Michigan strike, the Temple strike, are all kind of connected to this 40-year history of the defunding of public higher education, and a decision that we make every single day, insofar we make, and I use we like in the broad sense there, that is made by our legislators to continue down that path of kind of shifting education, public higher education, into a privatized, limited good for people, as opposed to being one of the kind of most important aspects of what we do to defend our democracy, right? So here you go. It's great. So do check that out too as well. Okay. Let me see what else I want to mention before I got to go. I do have to take off early today. I apologize for the, kind of, like I said, complete disorganization. Oh, definitely got to say, great, great piece here. Great news here. Like, we saw legislation pass after 22 years. LGBTQ anti-discrimination legislation clears the hurdle in the PA House. Right. So this is coming from the Pennsylvania Capital Star. Peter Hall writing this piece. So here, I'll just read a bit of that. Legislation that would extend anti-discrimination protections to LGBTQ people across Pennsylvania cleared a critical committee hurdle in the State House on Monday, 22 years after the bill was first introduced. The bill, which now goes to the House for a floor vote, would simply add sexual orientation and gender identity or expression to the list of protected classes under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. The House Judiciary Committee approved the measure on a party line vote of 12-9. You want to talk about why it's important, right, to elect Democrats to the State House, even if you don't agree with all their policies? Here's a perfect example of this, because it gave the Democrats control over the House, therefore control over the committees, and therefore this bill is finally going to have is going to get light, and it's going to get a vote. Now, the proposal inspired emotional and passionate rhetoric from supporters, as Republican members of the committee suggested it would infringe on the religious convictions and freedom of individuals and institutions, blah, blah, blah. Following the vote, the bill's co-prime sponsors, Representatives Malcolm Kenyatta from Philadelphia and Jessica Bentham from Allegheny County, Benham, I always say Bentham, anyways, Jessica Benham from Allegheny, embraced its original sponsor, Representative Dan Frankel, Democrat from Allegheny. I quote, "Pennsylvania is a better place when it's fair," Kenyatta, the first openly gay man of color in the General Assembly, said, quote, "and right now too many Pennsylvanians can legally be discriminated against because of who we are, because of how they identify in critical aspects of their lives, including housing, including education, and winning public accommodations," unquote. Right? Quote, "When I drive to Harrisburg, I drive in and out of localities where my rights are protected or I am protected, and where I am not protected from discrimination," quote. Benham, the first openly queer woman in the General Assembly, said, and quote, "and I know well from personal experience how terrible the consequences of discrimination can be, not just on individuals, but on communities." Right? This is awesome. This is awesome that got out of the committee. Yes, this is not a done deal. Even if it passes the House, the State House, then it's got to go to the Senate. But just to be 100% clear for everybody out there, why this is important, what it means to add LGBTQ protections to protected classes under here. Well, basically, right now in Pennsylvania, it's right now the state law in Pennsylvania says that you can fire somebody for being gay. It's not a protective class. Like, say, okay, because you're at-will employee. Okay, here you are. Oh wait, you're gay. Oh, that's not good. I'm sorry, you can't work here anymore. That would be legal today, right? Now, not everywhere in Pennsylvania. Why? Because certain municipalities have passed protections, right? Anti-discrimination protections, right? That's what Jessica Benham is saying there. She leaves one municipality where her rights are protected, drives across outside of the municipality, and then suddenly she's at risk and can legally be discriminated against, and then drives into another one where, okay, yes, you got your protections again, right? You have inconsistency across here. So this would basically normalize it across the state, right? Fantastic news. Cool. What else? I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I do want to remind everybody then that on Monday, so you may have seen this already. So I put out, I watched the school board meeting, the Penridge School Board meeting on Monday, and pulled a bunch of video clips, mostly from parents, community members, and teachers who are speaking out against this hiring of this far right consultancy group called Vermilion Education from being hired by the school district to rewrite the social studies curriculum. Now, all kudos, I should have said this at the top of the show. Major kudos goes to Jenny Stevens. Jenny Stevens, for writing in the Bucks County Beacon, was the first, as far as I can tell, to blow the whistle, to let everybody, to alert people to the fact that the Penridge School Board has just was trying to sneak this into its agenda on the contract to hire Vermilion Education. And she published that on the 26th. The meeting was like kind of later that day. Parents scrambled. Once they learned about this, community members scrambled to basically show up at that board meeting. There were like emergency calls that were going out to make sure that there was a pushback, and there was. The parents and the teachers and the community members who came out to speak out against hiring Vermilion were phenomenal. They was there, but as one speaker said, that we're all here. We know that you're not going to listen to us. We know that you're going to sit here and you're going to be looking at your phones, trying to get through this thing. Okay, let public comment go ahead, and we'll do it, because we know that you're going to do what you're going to do anyways, right? And that's true, because there's like, look, there's all Republicans on the board. There's all, they all support this kind of far right agenda, right? What became interesting was, it turns out, that there's been these kind of like little kind of skirmishes, if you will, among members of the board, periodically over this past year. Joan Cullen and kind of Bannis Clemens, who is she's on the board. They have been kind of fighting kind of back and forth kind of pretty consistently. And it's clear that there's a cohort of 3, right, of the newly elected board members who went on this kind of QAnon right-wing platform, who have been pushing all the anti-trans stuff and all this stuff on the school board. They were basically trying to force this as for a quick vote with no public scrutiny. And then you had other members of the board, like even Joan Cullen, right? Again, I'm no fan of Joan Cullen, but Joan Cullen was basically right on process here, basically saying that you can't do that. Like, you're just basically trying to push this through without any public comment, which is going to potentially put us up for a violation of our own codes and potentially lawsuits, right? And that's what's going to happen. But after all of that, they voted anyways, and a 5-4 vote. They voted to approve the contract for Vermilion Education to come in and rewrite the K through 12 curriculum in Penridge School District, my kid's school district. So that's what we're gonna spend doing on Monday. So on Monday evening on Out the Coop Live around 7 p.m., we're gonna focus in what happened in Penridge and some of the aftermath and reporting that happens. That's gonna happen with that. Invite people to kind of join in the conversation that night. I'd love to hear kind of perspectives and kind of your thoughts on this. We might find also a way to just kind of open up some of the some callers for that show. Been thinking about that too as well, but at the very least, hope to have folks joining in on our YouTube comments to participate what's happening and to really think about what this means going forward. It's outrageous. So anyways, everybody, that's going to do it for me on this kind of like kind of Friday morning. We're supposed to get lots of rain this weekend. My one good news for this weekend for me is I'm getting to play D&D tomorrow, and I'm so excited. It's been way too long, and I'm going to be kind of delving into the fantasy world for a little bit to give myself a little bit of joy, and hopefully all my players a joy too as well. So we'll see at that. Anyways, we're going to call it there, and sorry for being all over the place, but this is kind of like the state of nature for me these days. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Amy, for tuning in. Thank you all for all your comments, and thanks to everybody for your continued support. I think that you are going to be increasingly excited about what we're the direction that we're going through in these podcasts. We got some just phenomenal guests coming on, and actually had the problem this week. This is kind of once before. I had the problem this week of trying to find more time in the week to actually have more guests on, because not this week, but kind of in the coming weeks, because I've had so many people that have been kind of wanted to come on the show, which has been really good. So that's great. Anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. I want to remind you that you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress where you can help support us for as little as $5 a month, right? And make sure to share the show, leave us that 5-star review on our podcast, right? And have a great weekend. See ya!